Hello. Today we're here with Professor Ian Gilmore, President of the Royal College of Physicians. President, I'd like to start by taking you back in time and ask if you could recall why and what made you decide to become a doctor.
I have to admit that I probably drifted into medicine. I was in a medical family. While there was no pressure on me, I was attracted by the fact that it had a strong science base, but it was also a people's sort of job. My infant school teacher apparently told my mother that I had a high sense of duty, so while I didn't perceive it as a calling, I think the fact that it is a job of altruism in some way attracted me. I did kick over the traces and rebel at the age of 16 and decide to be an astrophysicist or something for a year, but I very soon gave that up, perhaps because I was no good at maths, perhaps because actually what I really wanted to do deep down was medicine.
So were you a leader at an early age, even at school or college?
I think I've always been an enthusiast, and therefore those who show enthusiasm are sometimes pushed up front. So I would have tended to be, I don't know, the captain of the sports team sometimes, or I would be the main organizer of the sixth form dance. I'd like to think I wasn't pushing myself forward. I'd like to think that I was pushed by others, but that natural modesty might belie the truth. I don't know.
So if we take you forward in time to when you were a young consultant, were there any areas that you began to get interested in or become involved in that predicted where you are now?
I think I did get involved in medical politics within the hospital quite early. Again, it was probably my feeling that I should turn up to the division of medicine, which was the precursor, I suppose, of the clinical directorate of medicine. I felt I should turn up and find out what was happening, and by virtue of turning up, I seemed to be pushed to the front and ended up chairing our division of medicine, a bit like being clinical director of medicine, within a couple of years of arriving at the hospital. I enjoyed that, but I was also quite happy to hand it on. And looking back at my career, I don't think I've ever hung on to posts. I've always felt that change is a good thing, not just for me, but for organisations.
So do you think it's all intrinsic to you? Or were there any role models or mentors or people whom you aspired to emulate?
That's a very difficult question, and I can identify mentors for my clinical work. I can identify the people that turned me on to my specialty of gastroenterology, if you like. In terms of role models of leadership, no, I can't really, and that may be because I haven't, in honesty, aspired to leadership. I've just moved along. I've never planned ahead. I've never said, well, I'm going to go for that next job. I was medical director of my trust for 4 years. I learnt a huge amount, but I quite quickly decided that I wasn't going to become a career medical director. I hadn't got my eye on the next rung. Indeed, I was as good as offered the job of chief executive, and I turned that down. I thought I'd done hospital management, if you like, and I was just fortunate that the registrar post at the college happened to come vacant just at that time. I'd been a regional advisor. I'd worked with the college, not very closely, but I admired their values. I liked their independence, but the fact that they were charitable, have patients at the centre, and were not a trade union in any way. So, as I say, I'd never dreamt of holding a senior office at the college, but one came available, I took it. At that stage, I wasn't thinking, gosh, the next step is to be president, but the opportunity arose and I took it. So I've never been a great planner of my life, and I believe that if you do things to the best of your ability, then other opportunities will come along.
President, you mentioned that being a doctor involved a job which included science and art of medicine, along with involvement with people. Can you recall any patients or people that really influenced you or changed the way you thought?
I think looking back as a medical student in Lambeth, I was very struck by the link between illness, ill health and poverty. It didn't tend to be the accountants and lawyers that were in our beds with severe heart disease, with liver disease and so on. It was often those at the bottom of the social pile. And I guess I've always been very aware of inequities in our system, and so although I've never been political with a large P, I guess one of the drivers has been trying to increase the opportunity for those from less advantaged backgrounds. And I guess that when I became a clinician myself, I realized that as well as looking after that patient in front of me, that I did have a responsibility to the wider community and to society. And that sounds rather sort of trite, but I think doctors have tended to hide behind the primacy of the doctor-patient relationship, and everything else is somebody else's problem. And I think we're the most trusted profession. I think we have a scientific background that puts us in quite a privileged position. I think we've got a duty to speak out on issues, and this has become even more important to me as president of the college, because I've realised I have a chance now that I'll never have again, that people might actually listen to me. And so I've had I hope I've taken the opportunity to speak out on issues like climate change. I think most thinking physicians agree that unless we do something about the climate very urgently, that we'll have meltdown of life as we know it. And we must just grasp the opportunity to speak out. Alcohol, obesity, smoking have been other issues the college has been very vocal on. And so I guess that's something that I've moved on from the individual patient to the wider patient population. I think if I was to start medicine again, I might think seriously about public health, although I think I would also miss the looking after individual patients. I was very struck by Lord Darcy's suggestion in his next stage review that we should be training clinicians jointly in a clinical specialty and in public health, and I think that would be very powerful.
And finally, President, are there any ways that you manage to maintain a good work-life balance?
I've always felt I've had an ideal work-life balance, but whether my family would echo that is I think it is certainly important, but I don't think it's necessarily the same thing as working less hard. I've always worked hard at compartmentalising my life, particularly when I've spent chunks of most weeks in London. I'm very careful not to take that home. So I'm a firm believer in maximising the quality of the time that's spent with family or with friends. My wife might say that it's been a bit short on quantity.
President, thank you very much for giving us your time today and giving us some insight into your journey to becoming a leader in medicine.